Hi, favorite teacher. I'm Tori from Next Day Teaching, where I give you classroom management tips and strategies that you can use tomorrow. Today, I want to talk about 9 essential classroom management procedures and routines. Now, there are many, many more than 9, but I believe that these are the most critical. In other words, if you teach nothing else, teach these. And make no mistake, classroom procedures and routines do need to be taught. Kids don't magically wake up one morning knowing how to move silently through the hall from one class to another. They don't know magically what your expectations are for having water bottles in class, or how to bring the required supplies to your classroom. In departmentalized elementary classrooms or in most middle schools, expectations might also be different from classroom to classroom, teacher to teacher. You need to teach them. You need to teach your procedures and routines, expectations at the beginning of the year. You need to hold students accountable throughout the year, and you need to review them with intention later in the year. But that's another video. So first essential classroom procedure is entering into the classroom. Think about, how are students going to enter the classroom? Are they going to line up against the lockers or against the wall outside of your door? What are they going to do when they come into the classroom? What are they not going to do? Where are they going to go? Do they need to get a folder or a book or some sort of material? Do you have enough space for that in your classroom? Or is it going to be somewhere really congested, so you need them to go to their seats first, then you'll dismiss them by row or by table groups to go get their supplies? All of these things you need to plan before your students start walking in and making a mess of everything. What about if you're not in the room? Can students enter the classroom? Probably not. That's a pretty common expectation of no students in the classroom if there's no adult present. But again, you need to specifically tell this to students, otherwise some of them are going to take advantage. The second essential procedure is the quiet signal that you are going to use to get students' attention. I've talked before in other videos about quiet signals. I am a big fan. I've got my favorites. It's a simple count backwards from 5, but again, you need to teach it. Ask yourself, how are you going to get students' attention? How are you going to know that they're listening to you? What if they don't meet the expectation? What are you going to do in response? So when you teach the quiet signal procedure, especially if you've got younger students, even like 4th grade, upper elementary, again, you need to actually teach this procedure. So you're going to tell them and model what your quiet signal is going to look like. Class, when I need your attention, I'm going to hold up my hand and I'm going to count backwards from 5. It sounds like this: 5, 4, 3, 2. You model it for them. You show them what it looks like. Then you have them practice in isolation. You give them a topic to discuss. Let them talk for a few seconds. The topic itself doesn't matter. You just need the noise level to go up. Then you get their attention with your quiet signal. You debrief, that went well, or ooh, we need to work. And then maybe you practice it again, or maybe you move on. But the more you can practice your quiet signal in isolation that first day when you first introduce it, and then in authentic situations for that first week, the smoother it's going to go for the rest of the year. And the fewer times you're going to have to stop and reteach expectations when you get down the line into like October, November, December. Procedure number 3 is classroom transitions. So this could happen a couple of different times during the class, if you're transitioning, for example, from direct instruction to independent practice, or from group work to packing up time. I'll talk about packing up later. Or it could happen at the end of a class or at the end of the day. So if it's, a middle school or departmentalized elementary, then you're transitioning from science to math, or you're, again, packing up to go home at the end of the day. Transition times tend to be one of the looser, less structured time periods throughout the day. And it's when a lot of instructional minutes are lost. Because if kids don't know where to go, where not to go, what to do, how quickly to do it, how to get there, when to get there, all of these things that go into a smooth transition, then they're going to be congregating in a small area. They're going to be messing around with their friends, and it's going to be really hard to get their attention back to you so that you can move on. So set those clear expectations. Ask yourself, what will they do? What will they not do? And what are the consequences of not meeting expectations? Set those ground rules as early in the school year as possible. and then hold them accountable for the rest of the year. Now, if you're watching this in the middle of the year, all hope is not lost. You can absolutely start fresh. Say, hey, class, I was thinking over the weekend about our transitions. We really need to work on those. Let's set some ground rules. Let's set some expectations. It's not too late, and better late than never. Procedure number 4 is student supply procedures. What do students need to bring to your class every day? How will students know they need to bring that to class every day? And what's going to happen if they don't? Now, departmentalized elementary, usually, at least at the beginning of the year, teachers will let kids return to their home classroom to get any forgotten supplies. But later in the year, middle school, sorry, you forgot your Chromebook. You're doing the assignment on paper. So have a plan for that. How are students going to know what they need to bring to your class every day or on special days? Math teachers, do they need to bring a protractor, a calculator, or a compass on some days but not every day? ELA teachers, should they have a free reading book every single day? Assignment notebooks, also an everyday sort of thing. So plan for what students should bring, how they're going to know if they should bring any special supplies. Don't assume that they're going to remember just because you told them one day, 1 month ago. And then what is going to happen if they don't have those supplies. One of the things that I found success with was I would put a sign outside my door that would tell students what they needed to bring. So things that were on there every day were a free reading book, no matter what subject I taught, always bring a reading book, in your assignment notebook, and a pencil or something to write with if you're not math or if your school allows pens. So something to write with, assignment notebook, and a free reading book. Then if there were any additional supplies, I would write those underneath. So students got in the habit of checking my sign as they walked past from class to class to see, oh, I need to bring my protractor today. Oh, I need to make sure that I have I grab my math book from my locker at lunchtime. Now, if your room is tucked away in a corner, one of the years my classroom was in the very back corner of the school. That wasn't really practical, so I needed to come up with another way to communicate that to students. And in the end, I ended up having them just keep a lot of their supplies in the classroom. It was easier that way, and it cut down on the number of students who'd say, can I go to my locker to get that? Because again, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, we're wasting instructional minutes. Procedure number 5, we're more than halfway done. Classroom food expectations. Now, some schools have food policies, especially if the students have to eat lunch in the classroom or if they serve breakfast during the first hour. So please check with your school first to see if there is already a policy in existence, and then make sure that your classroom policy is in alignment with that. But even with school food policies, and especially if there's not, students love to snack. So if you don't have a food policy in place, then you're likely to have crumbs and messes and bugs. And I even knew one teacher who had mice. So it's very, very important to ask yourself, are students allowed to eat in class? When are they allowed to eat in class? And what should they do with their trash when they're done? Now, sitting here, all makes sense when Tori says it, right? Of course, they're not allowed to eat during class except during breakfast and lunchtime when they have to be in the classroom. And other than that, they're not eating in the classroom. And when they're done, they're going to throw away their garbage. But you need to tell students that. You need to make it very, very clear what they can do, what they can't do, and what is the consequence. Also, if they are eating in the classroom, give them a time limit. Don't let them just snack leisurely throughout the entire first period if that's how long breakfast is being served for. They don't need 40 minutes to eat a pack of mini muffins. So set that expectation and then hold students accountable. The more, I don't want to say firm because you're not really being strict with them, but you're just setting a boundary. You're holding the line. The more you do that, even when they test, even when they push, the easier and the smoother your classroom will run throughout the rest of the year. Because that's what we're really doing here. We're building sustainable teaching practices that let you focus on teaching and not on making sure that Stuart throws away his mini muffin garbage bag. All right, procedure number 6 is the end of class pack up procedure. So this could be the end of a class period in middle school. It could be the end of the day. It could be departmentalized. We're switching between two classrooms. But think about how much time you're going to allot to packing up. Typically, the older the students are, the quicker they can do it. When you're working with third or fourth graders, they're going to need 3 to 4 minutes to gather their things. You're going to need to remind them, oh, you're going to science. Make sure you have your science notebook and your science folder. Whereas middle school students, you can just tell them, hey, make sure that you got your things for your next class. You're on your own. Good luck. So besides allotting an appropriate amount of time for students based on their age and their grade level and their executive functioning, also consider where students will be during this time. Are they going to congregate during the door and wait to be dismissed? I don't recommend it. It's a small area with a lot of students in it, and that tends to lead to behavior incidents. But again, you know your classroom best, and your school might have a policy or an expectation where that is the norm. What are students going to be doing during that time if they're already ready to go and they're not supposed to be lining up by the door? Are they staying at their seats? Are they allowed to wander around the room? The more freedom you give them, the more likely it is that there's going to be a behavior incident at some point. So the more you need to be present, watching them, being an enforcer, making sure that they're making appropriate decisions. Not saying it's right or wrong, just saying you need to be aware of it. And if you don't set these expectations, students are going to try and take advantage of you. It's just student nature. All right, procedure number 7 is the water bottle procedure. Now again, your school might have a specific policy for this, so make sure you check with them first. I'll tell you my water bottle policy, and then you can adapt it however you see fit. I am a big fan of water bottles, but I have some qualifications, some specifications. It's not just a free-for-all of water bottles in Tori's class. I think that water bottles are a good thing because, first of all, it cuts down on the number of times that students ask to leave the classroom. So I know if they're leaving the classroom, it's to go to the bathroom, which they can't do in my room, please don't, or to go to the nurse, or they're leaving for an appointment. But if they're also asking to go get a drink of water, that's another instructional interruption. I have to stop my teaching to address whether or not they can go get water. If I tell them no, oh, I'm so thirsty, I'm going to wither away. And they get very dramatic about it. Whereas if they already have a water bottle at their desk, they can just take a drink whenever they're getting thirsty. Also, especially in warmer climates, hydration health is a concern. So if your school gets really warm, or if there's no air conditioning, or if it's just plain summer, please make sure that your students are drinking water. So first of all, think about, are students allowed to have water bottles in your class? Yes or no? And then if yes, what kinds of containers are allowed? So in my classrooms, I found a lot more success once I started limiting the types of containers. I'd say the water bottle has to have a screw-on lid. It has to securely fasten. In other words, no open cups and no straws, because if it tips, they're much more likely to spill. I also made the expectation that any generic water bottles, just like those plastic ones that you get at the grocery store, the ones that aren't like fancy or like the reusable ones. So if it's just a disposable water bottle, it's going to get dumped at the end of the day if it's left behind. So I don't want to have a collection of 10 water bottles half drank, we don't know whose they are. I'm not going to deal with that. I'll just dump it or feed it to my plants. I also specified only water is allowed. So no sports drinks, no energy drinks, no coffee, middle schoolers. Those things are great. Have them at home or on your way to school, but not in my classroom. And finally, if water bottles become a distraction, they will be set aside for the remainder of class, not taken away, not thrown away in front of the student, just set aside. You can have it back at the end of class. Now, I also, pro tip, found it really helpful to put these procedures for water bottles, especially in writing, and send them home to parents, because otherwise you have the parent who only hears, Tori took away my water bottle, and they don't get the full story of, yes, your child's water bottle was taken away because they were poking holes in the cap and squirting it at their friends. So just having all of these expectations in writing, making sure that parents get them, making sure that you're verbally telling students, cuts down on a lot of pushback that parents might give and protects you in case they try and say, you're not letting my child have enough water, sort of thing. I can point to my policy and say, here, this is what your child agreed to. This is what they violated. All right, and then kind of going along with water bottles, procedure 8 is the bathroom procedure. You need to have one. And again, check with your school, see if your school already has one in place. But here are some things to think about. How will students ask to go to the bathroom? Where will they sign out? Where will the passes be kept? Are there any time limits for when they can or cannot use the bathroom? How long they can take in the bathroom before they're expected to come back? I highly recommend using a bathroom sign-out log, even if it's not required by your school. I've seen it both ways. But I was able to actually save a student from detention because I had a bathroom sign-out log that proved she was not in the bathroom at a time when some graffiti was discovered. So because of that, she was not in trouble and we were able to figure out who the actual perpetrator was. So highly recommend having a bathroom sign-out procedure or a bathroom sign-out log. And most kids, when you explain that it's to protect them, they're understanding and they'll happily sign their name and the time that they left, the time they returned, that sort of thing. Now, if you want a bathroom signal or a bathroom procedure that work really, really well for upper elementary and middle school, I've got 2 videos on those topics. I'll link those below in the description if you want to hear more. And then last but not least, procedure number 9 is movement procedure. So when are students allowed to get out of their seats without asking permission? Are students allowed to get out of their seats without asking permission? Where can they go without asking you specifically? Places that are common are getting a tissue. If you need a tissue, please just get up and get it. Throwing away garbage or sharpening pencils. Now, something to keep in mind is that these things are still privileges, which means that if a student is taking advantage of the privilege of getting out of their seat without permission and moving around the room freely, it can be taken away. I had a student who would go to throw away his tissues in the garbage and then somehow magically end up on the opposite side of the room talking to his friend. And so we had a couple of conversations, a couple of warnings. He didn't shape up, so guess what? His getting out of seat privileges were removed. He had to raise his hand and say, "Excuse me, may I please get out of my seat to throw away my tissues?" And we would say yes or no. He pushed back, but after a while of holding him accountable to that, he was able to get his movement privileges reinstated, and we had a lot fewer disruptions of him on the opposite side of the classroom talking to his friend. Now, there's many, many more procedures and routines for your classroom. I just highlighted the 9 that I think are the most important, but if you want more, I made something called First Week Ready. Now, even if you're watching this in the middle of the year, it can still help you. First Week Ready is a gigantic teacher survival toolkit. And in there, among other things, are more than 30 classroom procedures and routines that you might want to think through and figure out, oh, what is my procedure for this situation? It can really help cut down on disruptions, and it can really give you instructional time back if you're able to tell your students, this is my procedure for this situation, this is what I expect at this time, this is the consequence if my expectations are not met. Setting those ground rules early, repeating them often, will help students know what's expected in your class, will help them focus better, and ultimately will give you more time to teach and for them to practice the skills that they're learning in your class. So I'll link First Week Ready below in the description. If you're still setting up your classroom, then check out this room setup video that I made and make sure that you grab the free room setup checklist, link also below in the description, so that you don't forget any of the little details that we have to figure out and remember one time a year only. If you like this video, please give it a like, consider subscribing, and I hope you have calm transitions and quiet hallways.